Did you know that up to 85% of a company's CO2 emissions come from traveling? Did you also know that it's easy to remove those 85%? Simply by booking a hotel room. Here's how it works. You need a hotel for a business trip, so you go to Goodwings.com. You choose between millions of hotels at comparable or even better prices than any other major booking site. Then you use our carbon calculator. It calculates the CO2 emissions of your entire trip, hotel stay, flights, trains, taxis, even meals. And then we remove your CO2, all of it, through nature-based removal projects. We simply plant trees, and trees automatically remove CO2 from the air as they grow. It's efficient, it's natural, and it's verified through the world's most recognized carbon removal standard, VCS, Verified Carbon Standard. You get a certificate and downloadable data about the carbon you've removed, saving you hours of tedious work when doing climate reporting. Too good to be true? Here's the best part. You pay only a fixed monthly fee, no matter how much you travel and how much CO2 you need to remove. You see, when ordinary booking sites make money from your bookings, they spend it on expensive advertising, billions of dollars, to sell more hotels. We don't. We do verified carbon removal. That's true unlimited net zero traveling. Want to try our booking platform?
Good morning, and if you're watching later on demand, I will say good day. And we have a really interesting topic for you here today. It is around why and how to do climate reporting. Oh yes, climate reporting. It's kind of like when your mom and dad told you in school that you better follow math because it will be useful later in life. So hopefully we can make this session very useful for you here today. My name is Thomas Kolster, and I am the CEO and the founder of the Goodvertising agency. I'm also the author of 2 books, The Hero Trap and Goodvertising. And we advise everything from Fortune 500 companies to startups on how to sort of navigate this really treacherous climate space where everybody is sort of claiming to be a climate hero and adding everything from net zero to carbon certified on what they do. And I usually have a very simple message for our clients, and that is to not focus on your journey and yourself as a climate hero, but really try and understand how you can help your customers on their journey towards a net zero lifestyle. But I could talk about that forever, and we have a lot of other interesting things to talk about. Climate reporting. And basically, why are we talking about this? Because it is a scale, you know, when you want to lose weight, you need to know how that is going. So if you're going to go on a climate reporting journey, that is your diet meal plan. And definitely we need to go on a diet as companies and as individuals. We are somewhat around those 7 tons of carbon emissions. And there's an urgent call as well. I think everybody who watched the COP26 saw how finally we have a serious and rallying cry from citizens, but also businesses finally standing up to the challenge. For SMEs, that is a golden opportunity in the sense that you are the ones who are often part of much bigger listed companies' supply chains. That's an opportunity. Also, in these sort of treacherous time with the Great Resignation, this is something and a way to keep employees and colleagues within the company, because this is something that I think most of us really, truly care about. And if that is not enough, obviously the IPCC report recently just came out. And to be honest, that is kind of like reading my math scores in school. You know, terrible, terrific, horrendous reading, and that should be your rallying cry here today. But anyways, I have a really exciting packed panelist panel here today for you. 3 exciting panelists that can help you on your journey. And our first speaker here today is Douglas Marett. He's an environmental engineer and GHG reporting expert. He's also an active part of the Goodwings advisory board. And he will give an overview of the key trends driving demand for climate reporting. And to make things really, really easy, he's going to give you 5 reasons why this is the time to get started with climate reporting. So Douglas, give us some insights.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction. And I'm of course happy to join this panel discussion today on climate reporting. I've had the privilege and challenge of addressing climate change for nearly 2 decades in 40 different countries. And that's for governments and as well as corporations and even different institutions, including finance. And when it comes to climate action and reporting, there's really been a rapid increase in companies reporting their climate impacts just in the last 5 years, and particularly in the last 3 years. Most of this increase is pushed by the climate crisis, which is real now. We're getting more evidence that's really saying, okay, now we've really messed up the planet already. We're at the tail end of averting a real crisis in the future. But it's also pushed by citizens and also investor action, which is forcing governments to have more detailed planning and to enact regulations that support climate action, and enforcing companies to also do as well, including reporting and climate action. In the past, it was mostly energy, transport, and heavy manufacturing companies who accounted for and reported their greenhouse gas emissions, and that's because they were regulated. However, now we see greenhouse gas accounting, reporting in many industries, and this includes things from industries from fashion, retail, food, professional services, amongst others. And now this kind of leads to 5 reasons why this is the time to get started with climate reporting. And these reasons fit no matter whether you're a small company, a medium or large size company, even though we obviously focus on SMEs today. The first reason is that 6 out of 10 consumers are placing a value on climate impact of the goods and services that they buy, according to a study by Enablesus. And a recent study by IBM also found that 4 out of 10 consumers are purpose-driven, which means they make their purchase decisions based on their conscience and not necessarily regarding price. So this is a big driver in terms of why climate action is required, but also why reporting is required, because these consumers want to know what a company is doing in terms of climate action and their reporting of greenhouse gas emissions. The second reason is that sustainable goods and services are actually good business. For example, the same Enablesus study found that 7 out of 10 consumers in Denmark are buying a greater volume of sustainable goods and services than they did 5 years ago. And this is backed up by a new study by NYU Stern Business School, which determined that half of all growth in consumer good market is now from sustainable goods. So that's a really indication of where impact is. And we should say that one of the main drivers that consumers are looking at, and even customers, B2B customers, is this greenhouse gas emissions component. The third reason is that regulations in the EU now require that listed companies report on their climate risks, including greenhouse gas emissions. While this is now being extended into the United States, where the Securities and Exchange Commission has just published a proposal on a similar regulation, which will likely be implemented this year and next year. I should note that the EU also encourages SMEs to do similar reporting, since they know that most of the supply chain is from listed companies. And within the EU, at least, SMEs make up 50% of the economy. So that business-to-business supply chain relationship is really important. The fourth reason why climate reporting is important right now is that consumers and governments understand the concept of value chains and life cycles, like similar to what Thomas had mentioned. This means that they know climate impact does not only come from the store where they're buying an apple, but they also from the companies who supply the goods and services that deliver that apple. And this could be from growing and harvesting, packaging, transport, and waste and disposal. So all those combined is what we call Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions, which are, of course, heavily influenced by this business-to-business relationship. And in that study by Enablesus, we found that 5 out of 10 SMEs are actually sharing their sustainability data with their B2B customers, or at least their customers are asking for it. And greenhouse gas emissions is on the top of the list of this sustainability information. In addition, I found, for example, last week that a major hotel certification will actually start requiring hotels to report on their greenhouse gas emissions in order to gain the certification from next year. So we can also see that it's not only government regulation, but these private initiatives that really show integrity are also pushing for greenhouse gas emissions, measuring and reporting. Finally, in the fifth reason, why climate reporting is important is that consumers are also your employees. And this is what Thomas mentioned. Employees value climate action as well. And in a study by BPMG and GlobalScan, they found that 6 out of 10 employees are motivated to work for and are loyal to companies that are socially and environmentally responsible. And there's a lot of social media talk in the business community today specifically about this due to the labor crisis and the shortage of qualified labor. These 5 points highlight a strong motivating factor for all companies to start addressing climate action right now. And the foundation for climate action is, of course, transparent climate reporting. And it's the old adage, as Thomas mentioned as well, is you cannot change what you don't measure. So I should add that in this context, the majority of companies' stakeholders are actually watching, as well as a company's competitors. So that competition level is really important, because if you don't actually start reporting on your climate actions right now and your greenhouse gas emissions, your competitors will be, and you'll be left behind in the market. So to round off, there's been a rapid increase in innovation, especially around greenhouse gas accounting and corporate reporting, where the number of, for example, web apps to address greenhouse gas accounting and offsetting solutions have dramatically increased just in the past few years. Innovation has been strengthened by a general increase in know-how as well, which allows for better data and also the reporting of scopes 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions. And this has significantly lowered the cost of reporting for companies, particularly for SMEs, so that it's now affordable for that group. So that's what I'm going to round off today and pass it to our next speaker.
Five really precise ways of why you should join that diet meal plan towards a net zero lifestyle. So to kind of dive into this and be a little bit concrete, we have our next panelist here today from the travel business. And Christian Møller-Holst is the CEO and founder of Goodwings, the hotel booking platform, helping its clients to reach net zero travel goals. And you saw the little commercial in the very beginning. And Christian, how do you report on travel emissions? And is this an easy start for SMEs? I mean, they always struggling with time, etc. So what's your spiel? What's your take on this? How can you help us on our diet?
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for hosting this morning event. It's not easy. And that's actually some of the things that I'll get into in a minute, I think. But I'll start out with stating the beautiful thing is businesses are increasingly wanting to travel more responsibly. I think people like the three of us, the panelists here today, who work with sustainability, climate impact, our network consists of people who are working on this, researching on this, discussing solutions and science. And from time to time, we have to travel. And that goes for businesses as well. So Obviously, the best thing would be not to travel, but let's face it, we have to travel for work sometimes. And the question is what to do knowing that zero emission aviation is maybe 15, 20 years into the future. Well, there is a solution, and it is not that difficult. It is fairly easy. You'll have to, one, calculate how much CO2 you are emitting with your business travel, anything from your transfers, your flights, trains, hotel stays, etc. And then find a verified project, a project of integrity that removes carbon from the atmosphere, and then go ahead and purchase the removal of an equivalent amount. And lastly, if you're doing climate reporting in your business, you'll need some sort of documentation. So since more and more businesses are struggling with all of the above, but want to travel more responsibly, we decided to build just that and come up with an innovative business model that allows us to pay for this relative high cost of verified removal for our clients. Because when it comes to travel, price still matters. So that's what we do at Goodwings. We help calculate, remove, and we document everything around it. So businesses basically sign up with us on a monthly or annual basis on quite affordable plans. And once you're a member, you get access to the platform, which is as good or as bad as any other hotel booking platform out there. We offer roughly the same 1.2 million hotels at competitive rates. So you basically get the same hotels at more or less the same rates as any other major platform. The big difference is, before completing your hotel booking, you'll have to use the carbon calculator, as the video explained, which basically helps us calculate your total travel emissions based on reliable sources such as DEFRA. So even if you only book your hotel with us, we help you take responsibility for your entire trip. We then use the commission from your hotel booking to pay for the verified removal of your emissions, always through these projects of high integrity, verified nature-based projects, removing carbon from the atmosphere. And in the year, we provide you with a nice certificate documenting both the calculation and the removal of your emissions. So this is the service that we provide. And why is this interesting in this context of increasing climate concern among businesses and climate reporting? Well, we see massive signups from businesses, across industries and from more than, I believe, 20 or 25 countries. Post-COVID, if we can talk about post-COVID, at least the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen a massive increase in signups from companies of more or less all sizes, across industries, across regions. And we asked them why they sign up. So they sign up for mainly 3 different reasons. They want to save time on the calculations, they want to save money, and they want to take action. But above all, what they seek is a solution that reduces complexity. And I think that's really the key takeaway here, because incorporating tools like ours, and there are many great tools out there, into your business operations will help you collect data on your emissions effortlessly, which will make it easier to set actionable net zero goals and make your transition into true zero easier. And if we are to scale the private sector's contribution to solving climate change, I think that is really the task. We need to make it super easy and super affordable. That's really everyone's responsibility. And that's basically what gets us up in the morning in regards to taking responsibility in the travel sector and addressing the increasing needs from conscious businesses.
Thank you so much, Christian. And obviously, all the viewers out there, do use this opportunity to ask both Christian and Douglas questions, because that is why we're here. So hopefully you can become a little bit smarter on climate reporting. And I'll actually reiterate what Christian said. I mean, we are in the obviously service business, and the biggest part of our carbon emissions obviously comes from travel. So a very easy and no-brainer way of actually getting an overview of our carbon emissions as an agency. So our last panelist here today is what I would probably call a climate reporting pro. It's Mia Møgelgaard, and she is the Global Impact Manager of Skagerak. And Mia will talk a little bit about her experience with climate reporting and the importance of reporting and emissions data insight when it comes to planning on reducing their company's carbon footprint. And for those of you who don't know Skagerak, I can tell you absolutely should, because this is the time where you usually take your outdoor furnitures outside and enjoy the sun. And Skagerak, outdoor furnitures. Yeah.
This is what we do well. Thank you for the introduction, Thomas. I will try to give just a brief overview of what we've done in terms of climate reporting at Skagerak. And I'll just see if I can put my slides up here. Otherwise, maybe there we go. So thank you for calling me a pro. I would say we're still just learning as we go, but we have done some climate reporting in our company, and I'll be happy to share my insights with you today. And as you just very kindly mentioned, we produce indoor and outdoor furniture that ages with grace and lasts for generations. We're a Danish design company founded in 1976. We're B Corp since 2017. And we're based in Denmark, and I'm working from the Copenhagen office. And our starting point on this whole climate journey was actually that we committed to a net zero 2030 goal back in 2019. And we committed to this goal along with, I think, 500 other B Corps from around the world. Today, I think there's more than 1,000 B Corps who've committed to this goal. And to be honest with all of you guys, we didn't really know how to achieve this goal back then. We still don't have all the answers, but we do know that the first very important step towards this net zero journey was to work with some accurate climate reporting to get a solid baseline to see where do we stand, where are our biggest emission hotspots. And that's why we decided that we really need to spend some time on some accurate climate reporting. And we quickly decided that our first step would be to get some help. I know, and also what Douglas touched upon just earlier, there are lots of tools available now that actually allows companies to do their own reporting and calculations, but we felt most secure getting a guiding hand in this process. And luckily, there's lots of good consulting companies out there that can help you out. So we teamed up with another Danish B Corp, a consulting company who specializes in climate reporting, and they really guided us through this process. And then once we found this sparring partner, we started getting an overview of our scope 1, 2, and 3, and then finally we defined our future plan towards this net zero goal, and I will get back to that a little later on. So we started crunching numbers. And for our first climate report, we worked primarily with activity-based data for our scope 1 and 2. And then we worked with spend-based data for our scope 3, which basically means that we looked into our bookkeeping and categorized everything we purchased for a full business year, everything from our products that we sell to our company traveling to the flowers we have in our offices. And I'll be honest with you, it was a huge task, but it was necessary for us in order to get the full picture. And it was actually really nice for me and my colleagues also to really dive deep and get a really good insight into what are we actually buying, how much do all of these purchases emit, and so on. And after all of the number crunching, our final results looked like this: a total of little more than 7,000 tons of CO2 emitted, and an overview that clearly shows that the majority of our emissions lie in our scope 3, which is just as expected. And then for each scope, we can also dive deeper and see where the different hotspots are. So for example, we can see how much our company traveling emits. We can look deeper into our freight, and we can see how much our products actually account for, which is by far the biggest majority of the emissions. And all of these numbers have been presented to our employees, because many of the actions that we will take going forward will actually involve them. So there's a lot of colleagues involved in this climate journey going forward. And it's actually been really cool to see how engaged they've been in these insights. And it's sparked a lot of good discussions internally as well. Two of the outcomes from our climate reporting were these two reports. We created what we call a highlights report, which is a shorter version. I think it's 8 or 9 pages, which gives an overview of our climate endeavors. It describes our ambition level. It shows the most important numbers from the climate reporting, and also our action points going forward. And then we have the full report, which I think is around 30 pages, which are for those people who really want to dive deep and see all the calculations that lie behind the results. And we've put them up on our website. We've tried to spread them via our own channels to really be as transparent as possible. And so people can go and have a look at how have we done this reporting and what do our results look like for the base year. Going forward, we have also defined some different reduction activities. These are just the ones we're working on this year. For example, we've updated our travel policy, so we give inspiration to all of our colleagues on how they can travel with less impact. It's mandatory that you book your traveling through Goodwings. We also have some good pointers on what hotels you can choose if you go to different cities, because the emissions vary quite a lot. We've updated our company car policy. We're also using another tool that measures the CO2 emissions on all of our products to really try and lower the total impact of our production as well. So lots of reduction activities that we're working hard on now. And then also we're working simultaneously with some data improvement activities because we want to move away from this spend-based data over to more activity-based data to actually get some more correct numbers for our next climate reporting. And this is also where Goodwings comes into the picture again, because one of the action points we have for this year is to collect what we call activity-based data on the company traveling to get more accurate data when our employees go from A to B around the world. And this is what it looks like when we log into our Goodwings site. I can log in and get a tailor-made report that informs me of all the company bookings and calculates the total emissions for me. It's a task that would otherwise take a lot of time to do, and it wouldn't be nearly as accurate. So for me, at least, it's really beneficial to work with this tool as well. It's just, you could say, one step towards the net zero journey, but it's an important step because we know that the more accurate data we have, the better climate reporting we can do in the future. It also saves a lot of time, just like Christian mentioned before. So it's less hours for us spent on data collection, and then we can actually spend more time on working with reductions. And then we also see a higher staff engagement in our climate efforts. Our colleagues use Goodwings for their private traveling as well now as for their company traveling. So it's been a good tool for us to kind of visualize what are the emissions when we look at our hotel bookings, the traveling back and forth, and how can we take action and incorporate some better habits in our everyday work life in Skagerak. So I think that was all for me just now. Very brief overview of what we've done, but I'm of course happy to answer any questions that might be about how we've approached this task.
Thank you, Mia, and what a fitting way to talk about a journey, because this is very much a journey, right? And I think one of the questions, and thank you for asking those questions, and please keep those questions coming at the panel, because this is your opportunity to get some of your most important questions answered here today. But I think you provoked one question, Mia, and I'll actually do a split between you and Christian, because the first question is, as an SME, how much time and hassle is saved by using a booking tool like Goodwings? Because you mentioned that as one of your sort of end remarks here, Mia. And then let's go to Christian afterwards to get the big overview on that.
I mean, I think one of the things we've learned by doing this climate reporting is that it's always like you have to weigh it. How much time do you want to spend on collecting accurate data versus how much time do you want to spend actually improving the way you run your business. And I work in a company with 45 people, and I'm the one in charge of our sustainability work. Of course, it's in collaboration with a lot of colleagues, but there's only so much time to be spent on these different tasks. So I would rather use a tool that can save me some time during the data collection, and then spend the time on actually reducing our emissions. And I know I could probably get these numbers somewhere else if I really started digging into it, but it would, I think, it wouldn't be nearly as accurate, and it would take me a lot longer. So for us, it was a no-brainer when we were approached by Christian and his team a year ago that, of course, we would like to get on board with this. And as I mentioned, it's just one step. We're doing so many different things to lower our emissions and get more accurate data on a lot of different areas in the company. But for us, at least, it's been a big help.
I think just the easy little hint you said in terms of what hotels you choose does make a quite a big impact. So a really easy, helpful way of doing that. Christian, the big overview of this, is this something that you see resonating across other SMEs that you guys are working with?
Definitely, but I think it is always more interesting to hear from the clients. So thank you, Mia, for giving your perspective and supporting our mission. We've asked our clients, and obviously they vary in size and shape, and also the travel pattern is quite different across industries. But averaged out, we save our clients 150 man hours yearly, because prior to using our service, and what they had to do was basically to get a copy of all the invoices from the trains and the plane tickets and the hotel reservations, etc., and turn that into a CO2 figure. So obviously we help not only to make more accurate data, but also to save time. And I think that is one of the trends that we'll see, that service providers will have to build these into the transactions, because by building the CO2 calculation into the transactions, we save everyone time, and that's what's needed. But it's also a matter of courage. I think the journey that you're on, Mia, it is courageous, because you need to face reality. What are we emitting as a company? A lot of the companies that start with Goodwings, it's the first thing they do. I think Skagerak is much further on your journey. We're just one tool in your toolbox, and we're happy to be in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. But many of the companies that sign up with Goodwings from countries that are not as far as we may be, as we are in the Nordic countries, it's the first thing they do. So one of the things that we take pride in is to fuel their journey as companies. And the reason that they haven't started is not because ESG, climate, sustainability is not as big a thing in their countries. It's because they didn't really dare to look into, to get the numbers out. And that's also what has been affecting our industry for years. I seriously don't understand why none of the big travel platforms have not at least made the CO2 calculations available 10, 20 years ago. But they were afraid to, because they didn't want to jeopardize business. But we need to face reality and be more courageous.
I think that's a very, very good point, and another rallying cry here today. And we have another question that probably looks a little bit more at the legitimacy and the trust of all of this. And the question could probably be split between you, Christian, and Douglas, because in fact, how do one ensure that calculation methods are consistent across industries and organizations? I think this is a question that often comes up when we talk about sustainable related question, this idea about comparing pears and apples. So maybe, Christian, if you just want to do the short one, and then maybe Douglas, you can add a bigger perspective to the challenge of actually ensuring a consistent, trustworthy data stream.
I think reliable data and integrity in your calculations is of the greatest importance. You need to find a reliable source, and you need to find a source that also regularly updates the emission levels, because with new technologies, these things change. So we decided to base our carbon calculation on DEFRA, which is one of many reliable institutions in Europe. I believe it's the UK Ministry for Mobility or something like that. So we use their data, and we have an integration to to their source, so that we can quite often update it. But that is, and everything is laid out on our website and made transparent how we calculate and why we've chosen this source. Yeah.
Great. So I think that's even also a good insight into reporting just in general, to be transparent, something that you touched on as well, Mia. The general challenge of this, Douglas, in terms of choosing the right data sources, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that data sources, and as Christian mentioned, the integrity of data sources is quite important. And when it comes down to it, the integrity also relates to the uncertainty levels, and most of the data sources that you look at can indicate that. In terms of, for example, the DEFRA numbers, they're basically done by a scientific panel related to the UK government, and they're updated annually. And this is quite important, as Christian mentioned, because, for example, in Denmark, and even in the UK, we have more renewable energy entering the system, so that numbers do actually change every year. So the important thing really is to look at and see, is there a scientific basis behind the data that you're using? And when you look at different sectors and in industries and organizations, in travel, it's also quite different. So looking at that integrity level is quite key.
Great, and we have another question which sort of goes back to the journey that you have been on, Mia, with Skagerak and the challenge, and obviously really interesting to see how you both have the bigger report and the sort of smaller report. But the question is, in fact, how do you use these reports in sort of steering you on that journey towards net zero? What are the role of those reports?
Yeah, I mean, once we got all the data back from the consulting company that we work with, I've been in close dialogue with them along with a few other colleagues. So we've been 3 or 4 people involved in the calculations, and we got like the full report back, and we quickly realized that we really want to build some internal engagement around this, as I mentioned before, because we know a lot of colleagues are going to be involved in the reduction activities going forward. And that's everyone from HR to sourcing to product development and so on. So many people are going to be involved in this journey. So we wanted to make it easy to understand and also build awareness and engagement around it. So I worked with some colleagues on how can we present this in the best way internally. We had a lot of workshops where we looked at the numbers. It sparked a lot of good conversations on what can we actually do. Goodwings was one way where we could approach it and see, okay, people are actually starting to ask questions on how should I travel from A to B? Can I choose a better hotel when I arrive in this city? What should we measure everything on? And they gave some good insights there. And the same for our company car policy, and the same for the people working with design and product development. They had some other talks around the products and how much they emit. So we wanted to build this internal engagement, and then we knew from the beginning we also wanted to be transparent about our results externally, because we know that so many other companies are on the same path, on the same journey, and if we can share what we've learned from this process, then we'd be happy to do it. So we created these 2 reports, tried to spread it as much as we could. So that was basically to build the awareness and engagement. And then, of course, we have to really tackle the biggest emission hotspots now. So we've talked to all of our freight partners, because we can see, okay, there's a lot happening within freight. We've also updated our policies on traveling car policies. We've looked at the products now. So there's a lot of different working groups now starting to really try and reduce the emissions as much as possible. And then, of course, now we're starting to have some really interesting talks around, okay, how can we define a budget going forward that will allow us both to look at removal projects and also reduction activities? Because we do have this net zero 2030 goal, and we know it's going to be a balance of reducing as much as possible and then offsetting what we can't reduce any longer. So now we're talking about how should we invest going forward. So it's an ongoing conversation, and it continues to become more and more exciting. And what I really like to see is that it's not just me working on it. We're a lot of people at Skagerak really trying to tackle this together.
Super insightful to hear how the whole company is coming together across departmental functions, even a smaller company, to solve this quite complex challenge. And also in some ways that the reporting for you and Goodwings sort of work as a guide. I think a lot of us obviously think about how we can live a more carbon-friendly lifestyle. So such an interesting insight there. And that sparked another question to our panelists. And I think maybe, Douglas, it could be a good question to you, because the question is, in fact, that if you think ESG and climate reporting is relevant for smaller business, they say here that they are 10 employees. Obviously, you talked about 5 reasons, but maybe there's a couple of other reasons that might emerge for why this 10 employee size company should embark on this journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example of just our own company. We're even less than 10 employees. We have a lot of freelance consulting experts who work on different projects. But for example, our clients, and we're professional services companies, obviously. So our clients are, for example, UN agencies, different governments, and all these kind of things, organizations, along with private companies, and they actually ask for our impact. So when we submit tenders, for example, we always put in a section that indicates, okay, what is our impact? What are we measuring? We actually even do sustainability reports every year. And so we see it as a competitive issue, that if we don't do this, then our competitors will. And particularly for small companies like us, we're also competing with the very large companies that are hundreds of thousands of times larger than us, and they are doing it. So from our side, to deal with this ESG and climate reporting really is a competitive issue. I mean, we're lucky enough that we actually know it really well, like the back of our hand. But the other SMEs can definitely do it through a bunch of new tools. And the advantage with SMEs is that you or we, particularly smaller companies like a 10-person company mentioned here, it's really easy to measure a lot of ESG items, particularly things on like diversity. So it's not only climate, but also different impacts. And as Mia and Christian and Thomas, you mentioned, we do have a lot of really great tools that are available. So with a little expense, and I mean a little expense, we can actually do that tracking and reporting. And it doesn't have to be a 100-page report, like Arla or Nike. It can simply be 5 pages that describes, what it is you're doing and what data you're collecting and what are your actual results.
But Thomas, maybe I'll just add to what Douglas mentioned. I think competition is definitely something that drives not only the competition upstream, downstream, and for talent. And then there's the moral obligation that I talked about earlier. But thirdly, I see legislation. And Douglas, you probably know a lot more about existing and upcoming legislation than I do. But we get a lot of companies from Sweden, Italy signing up these days. And as far as I understand, companies above 200 employees in Sweden need to start reporting on climate. And as far as I understand, all companies in Italy. So I think legislation is driving this, and this sort of legislation is coming across. I don't know if you can loop us in there, Douglas, but
I mean, there's no doubt that this is driving, and even though you mentioned legislation that specifically requires particularly medium-sized companies to report, and in Sweden does actually have this nice database as well, but we, as we mentioned earlier, because of the supply chain issues, if you're a small and medium-sized company and you're involved in a business-to-business relationship with larger organizations, then they do have to report. And like Skagerak, I mean, they showed this nice figure which showed their supplier emissions, from all their suppliers, and they need to get that information. And if you are a supplier, to a company that is regulated, then you are going to be asked for that, and it is happening. There's also softwares that connect, different B2B companies, so that this information could be easily handled. But legislation is coming, and particularly for the EU, there's also a pretty big push for SMEs within the EU, both in supporting actions. And even countries like Denmark, the Danish government has actually had a green growth program that actually paid for these services like Skagerak may have received for small and medium-sized businesses. And this is happening in all different countries. So the legislation is driving this, but we need to note that even though you may not specifically be required under legislation, you may be required based on your linkage to other businesses and consumers.
And if I can just demystify it a little bit, it's not that difficult. I was interested to see how difficult it would be before we embarked on this, but it's doable even if you're a small company. I mean, it's been good insights for us, so it can be done. If we can do it, I think everyone else can as well.
I think that's a very helpful note, because I think this is one of the things that we keep coming back to, right? Is this thing of effort, and obviously being an SME with so many other things on the agenda, and especially in harder economic times. Obviously, I think ease is and seems to be one of the things that we keep circling around here. And let's just see, we have a last question coming in just now. There's a question from Jennifer Norrit, so thank you so much for asking that. So are you also giving guidance to select the journey with the least emission as possible? So here's a little bit more around the guidance of the action platform. So thank you for asking that question, Jennifer. That's got to be one for you, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we do. The carbon calculator, when you book your hotel, before you can complete your booking, you need to use the carbon calculator, and that shows your level of emissions choosing train as opposed to car or flight or etc. So your choice of transportation, it will be quite visible for you, the emission levels. So by doing that, we obviously hope to notch people to travel as low emission as possible. But let me just add to that. I think that's the fundamental difference between the way we build ourselves and our competition, because we don't make money from the hotel bookings, and we don't rely on it. And I think that's really one of the key takeaways for me in terms of innovation in this space is we need to build business models where our financial interest is aligned with our planetary interest. So we don't have to push people to travel. Actually, we encourage them to travel less, which is quite unusual for a travel company. But we do it because we've built ourselves and put ourselves in a position where we make the most of our money, if not all the money, from the subscription. And that, I think, is something that we should try to apply to all industries, because emission levels are going up, and we need to look at consumption and production, and we need to rethink growth and commercial interest and create businesses or redefine businesses so that our own interest is more in alignment with planetary boundaries and climate concerns, etc.
I think that's a very good point, and also actually the point about price competitiveness, which is obviously also important if you are an SME, budget restraints, etc. We have one final question for our panel here today, and that comes from Anders Skogum-Winter. So thank you so much, Anders, for asking this question. You mentioned good tools that help make reporting easier. Besides Goodwings, what could help reduce the burden for smaller companies? And can you help suggest an ecosystem of services and tools? And I think, Douglas, maybe that could be one question for you, or we can do a quick fire around to all of you. So maybe just one good advice from each one of you in a tool that's inspired all of you. But Douglas, maybe if you'll kick off the little ask for help here. Thanks, Anders.
Yeah, I would say that, unfortunately, there's a lot of tools. So to say there's one specific one is quite tricky. But if you look at carbon accounting in ESG, there's actually quite a number of tools that integrate both. So you can do your corporate carbon accounting and ESG. For example, you can also just take your data from Goodwings and put it into your overall corporate emissions, like Mia showed. But those tools are certainly available. And the good thing is that some of them also can link you to your supplier already, so that you don't actually have to deal with requests all the time. Your supplier can actually get the information directly. And it's to mention a few, you have World Favor, EcoVadis, Normative, Plan A, and several others that can do this for you.
Perfect. Mia is the one in this little talk about tools.
I guess it depends on
how much do you use?
I mean, I guess it depends on what industry you're in. We're in the furniture business, and we're lucky enough to have another Danish company called Møgelgaard, who's developed a fantastic tool that can calculate emissions on furniture. But it might be another tool for another industry. I think I would recommend, if you feel like it's a daunting task, maybe look into getting a company help you do your first baseline accounting. It will give you some good insights, and you'll feel confident in the result you end up with. And as I think you mentioned, Douglas, just be a little critical of the budget as well. It can be done for not a lot of money. There might be companies out there that charge a lot, but we're a good example of finding a company who really helped us out in a good way without killing the budget. So if you feel most secure getting help, at least for your first year of calculations, that could be a good way to go. And you'll get a very good feeling of what it actually takes to get a credible result in the end.
Perfect, Christian. We know what you're going to recommend, and Goodwings is your tool to go to, obviously, for sustainable travel, and obviously also guiding you on this treacherous path to becoming net zero. For me, this has been extremely insightful. I think there was a couple of really, really good takeaways here. The first one, obviously, what you cannot measure, you cannot change. So you need to begin the journey. And as Mia reiterated, it is a journey that brings the whole company together on lowering the carbon footprint. Because by the end of the day, we got to figure out how we're going to hit that meal diet plan. And that obviously demands guidance. And I think it was a good wrap off as well to say, if you don't know how to get started on this journey, obviously ask for help out there. And then maybe the final little word to just kind of strengthen what you said, Christian. This is about courage, right? And this is about acting right now, because whether it's pressure from legislation that we heard that is coming, or whether that is pressure for your customers, or whether that is in fact our innovation possibility, you cannot ignore this topic. So hopefully we will see you back on this channel and much more conversations going forward. But thanks to all the panelists, thanks to everyone who asked questions here today, and have an impactful and inspiring day.